Hello, English 125 students. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about moving pictures before motion picture film was actually invented. So moving pictures was nothing new when motion pictures came around, but how motion picture film actually took place was totally innovative and mind-blowing at the time. Let me step back a little bit so I can explain to you exactly what I'm talking about. Motion pictures had been around for centuries or even millennia before motion picture films even existed. See, all motion pictures are based on frames or single pictures. These single pictures move little by little, and as they move, your mind is tricked into thinking that they are actually moving rather than seeing a series of sequential still pictures. This takes place through what is called the persistence of vision. So what is persistence of vision? Persistence of vision is an illusion that happens when you see one image taking place right after another in sequence. Your mind is deceived into thinking that these images are happening one right after another. Now, to put this in a little more technical aspect, your mind continues to see an image 1/5 of a second after it takes place. So, if you replace one image after another that looks like there's a continuous movement, and it is happening at least 1/5 of a second apart, your mind will splice them together and you will see no gap in between them. So you will be deceived into thinking that these separate images are all part of one continuous movement sequence. And you'll think that it's happening in motion just like real life does. The idea of motion pictures and persistence of vision have been around for centuries and even millennia, but has always been used as sort of a magic trick or a novelty. People used to draw small pictures and then move one right after the other. Just like you see in flip books that you might have, seen when you were a kid. Maybe you even drew some or looked through some that were part of a textbook and flipped through it and saw those little pictures moving one right after another. Well, that technique has been around for centuries. Zoetropes were another little magic trick of motion pictures that have been used for centuries. A zoetrope is a small cylinder that has slots in it that you can look through. Now, what's inside of that cylinder is a series of sequentially drawn pictures that might show an animal moving or a person jumping up and down, or maybe a person riding on a horse's back. It could be anything. A person doing a somersault. There were all sorts of them that were done. Now, as you spun the cylinder, it would move around, and when you look through the slots, it would create the illusion that these pictures were moving in a sequence. Now, all of these were hand-drawn, so they were not realistic depictions of what would take place in real life, but it was a fun little novelty, and children often liked them as well as adults. So how do these motion picture precursors relate to film development? Well, people had interest in motion pictures, but nobody actually set out to create motion pictures. Nobody sat down and thought, I want to make a device that creates motion pictures to entertain people. Motion pictures came about as a bunch of happy accidents, technical innovations, a bet, and some luck. What really sparked the progress towards motion pictures was a bet between Leland Stanford, a wealthy businessman and former governor of California, and one of his wealthy friends at a horse race track back in 1872. Now, what took place at this horse race track was that Leland Stanford was looking at the horses and he said, you know what? I think that as those horses run, there's some point where all four hooves are off of the ground at the exact same time. His wealthy friend said, you're crazy. There's no way. That horse always has at least 1 foot on the ground. And so a debate started. But because Mr. Stanford was both very wealthy and insisted that he was right, he commissioned a photographer and an inventor, Edward Muybridge, to set up something so that way he could capture a horse and rider as they galloped across the racetrack. So what Edward Muybridge did is he hooked up a series of cameras to tripwires, 12 cameras to tripwires to be exact, and he allowed a horse and a jockey to ride across, tripping each tripwire, instantly freezing a moment in time that they could study and look at. Well, long story short is that Stanford won his bet. There were at least 2 photographs in that series of photographs that showed that at some point in time, that horse's hooves, all 4 of them, do actually leave the ground at once, leaving the horse suspended in midair for at least a portion of a second. Now, this led to a whole bunch of other scientists and inventors and photographers wanting to capture and study motion. They took pictures of people and how they move. They took pictures of animals. They tried to take pictures of everything that they could. And this leads us to a French inventor named, hold on,